What is going on, YouTubeverse? John Stanek from Johnny Radio here, bringing you another Viva La Vinyl classic album review, and I couldn't be more excited today than to be talking to you about my favorite band of all time, the Beatles, and their 1965 classic, Rubber Soul. Such a great album, smack dab in the middle of their amazing discography, their sixth studio album, and this was really when they were starting to spread their wings, not just instrumentally, but also lyrically. They were writing things a little bit darker, a little more insightful. It wasn't, I want to hold your hand anymore. It was more along the lines of, the perfect example would be my favorite track on this record, Norwegian Wood, where John Lennon goes to a girl's house. He falls asleep in her bathtub. She goes and leaves him for work the next morning. So he decides to burn her house down. So a lot of people don't even realize that's what it's about because it's so upbeat, even for a folk rock song. And this is also the song where they introduce the Indian instrument, the sitar, for the first time. George kind of slides it in there, and it just fits perfectly. So well done that the Rolling Stones decided to do it a year later on Painted Black, also to great effect. The Stones always kind of following in the footsteps of the Beatles, and that's also kind of where the title of this record came from. Paul McCartney saw in the news that somebody was referring to Mick Jagger's singing as plastic soul. I guess kind of a, not the real thing compared to the Motown and blues sound that they were kind of emulating in the early 60s. So he thought that was funny, and then also made a pun about shoes. So Rubber Soul, there you have it. And it's kind of a perfect match for the sound of this album, because while there is folk music, pop, rock, what we were accustomed to with the Beatles, they did infuse some of that plastic soul into this as well. Like on the opening track, Drive My Car, it has a real kind of meteor sound to Paul's bass playing. Also, George's lead guitar is very impassioned with a lot of blues fills. And of course, the Beatles with their trademark harmonies and such a strong melody that you can't help but sing along to. And, that's just the power of the Beatles. I remember being a kid in school, and I guess I had heard this. My mom always played me Beatles records back in the day, and I was just mouthing the beep, 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 yeah, when I should have been focused on my studies, and my teacher called me out for it. I'll never forget that moment. But, those things get stuck in your head, that it's so catchy, even as dumb as the beep, beep, yeah thing is. It's fun, and it's the Beatles. You got to love them. And, there's so much fun throughout the album. The Word is another great song that has kind of their take on the soul sound, really upbeat, and they're singing about love, and the love was always the theme of all of the Beatles records, all the way up until their grand finale right behind me here, Abbey Road, which, when you think about the Beatles' discography, there's none that just keep getting better as they go and then end with their best. It's just incredible when you think about it. But this, as I said, in the middle there, they were starting to use different instruments like the harmonium that had never been used before. As I mentioned, the sitar, George Martin even thinking outside the box, playing a harpsichord on In My Life, which is another stellar John Lennon track, and one where he's singing about, as kind of an elder at this point. I think they were still in their 20s when this came out, but looking back on his life, on his youth, and how far he's come. And it's just brilliant songwriting and a wonderful track. Another great ballad on here is Michelle by Paul McCartney, which has a whole other vibe. It's kind of like a French cabaret style song. And he even throws some like nonsense French words next to each other, which is fun. And then, of course, the theme of love. I love you, I love you, I love you. What better chorus than that? And, so many great songs. But then On the flip side of that, you have Paul singing "You Won't See Me," which in his real life at the time he was dating Jane Asher, and she was putting her acting career kind of ahead of him. So that was his kind of Norwegian Wood song saying like, well, you won't see me. And then George had another kind of biting song on here called "Think for Yourself." So there's a lot of like kind of darker edge songs on here, even though it has the kind of classic Beatles major chords, kind of shiny sounds, and a lot of experimentation, not quite as much as the next album, Revolver, but you can tell they were getting into that phase. They were hanging around Bob Dylan at the time, experimenting with marijuana, LSD, and stuff like that. So you can see where some of these other sounds were starting to get involved. And as I said, it's just really cool to listen to the Beatles discography in sequence and see how they started with just, these four guys, which was great in the beginning, singing about "She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah," to this middle period to where they ended up. And it's just, they were the best, And this definitely... Man, it's tough. If I had to give this a grade, I would give it an 8 out of 10. It is not my favorite. It doesn't even make my top 5, which you can check out. I did my top 5 Beatles records on this channel, but it's definitely in the top 10. And, every Beatles record is good. So let me know, guys, what you think. How would you rank this? What grade would you give it? What is your favorite track on here? As I said, my favorite is Norwegian Wood. In my life, probably a close second. I think John was kind of the star of this record. Paul, probably more the star of Revolver. They always had that Lennon-McCartney dynamic going on. Of course, they threw a Ringo song on here. I won't even mention it. Definitely my least favorite on the album, as most Ringo songs are. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, all that jazz, and as always, Viva La Vinyl. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, all that jazz. Check out some of my other content that you can see on the screen now. Thank you again for supporting Johnny Radio. Take care, and I'll see you soon.